YouTube feuds. There's really nothing else like them on the internet. Some might argue that they're just a poor man's version of an old school Hollywood throwdown, but those people would be wrong. Hollywood pales in comparison because they do most of their backstabbing and arguing behind the scenes. You're not going to find a front row seat to every single second of drama from a Hollywood fight. But a feud between two well-known YouTubers? Better grab some popcorn and settle in because you know you're in for a wild ride that has as many twists and turns as any blockbuster out there. You're up close and personal to the action. You get to see it from the very beginning to the usually bitter end. You get to watch some of the biggest names on the internet backstab each other just to try and look a little less guilty than the person they're arguing with. And usually these things are just a flash in the pan, right? They're momentary. They go on long enough for the people to get involved to get their 5 minutes of attention, and then they just... A couple of weeks later, we've all just forgotten about it and moved on to the next drama. Unless, of course, you're a repeat offender and you just can't keep your name out of the headlines for starting fights with people. Jeffree Star. These things are rarely taken seriously because most of the time it's just a petty disagreement that gets massively blown out of proportion. Which makes sense because most of these people never seem to mature beyond the mean girl in high school. Now, don't get me wrong here. I'm not trying to say that every YouTuber is an innocent angel that can do no wrong. Some of them are guilty of some seriously messed up stuff. Looking at you, EDP, James Charles, Jake Paul, and gosh, this is a really long list. Do I have to read all this? We can move on? Okay, good. But sometimes these arguments do go beyond just your average petty drama. Sometimes they are a lot more serious in nature, and they can't just be brushed off and forgotten about. This finally brings us to the topic of today's video, the feud between YouTubers Boogie2899 and Frank Hassell. And you know, now that I think about it, I don't even know if I'd call this a feud. It all just seems so heavily one-sided that calling it a feud feels kind of wrong. I'm not allowed to say the word I'm thinking of, but it begins with an H and ends with a T. Have I got you interested in what's going on yet? Are you not entertained? I hope you are. I hope you're chomping at the bit to get into all the dirty details. But before we can go any further, I do just need to ask you to subscribe to the channel and make sure your post notifications are turned on so you never miss any videos. All right, now that you're done, here's what went down. So before I start really breaking the situation down and start picking the timeline apart, let me just give you a quick refresher on who either of these people are. Obviously, they're both YouTubers, but what do you actually know about them besides that? Let's start with Boogie2899. He's been a YouTuber for a really long time, like well over 15 years kind of long. He started his channel back in April of 2006. If you grew up in the late 2000s and early 2010s like a lot of us did, then you've probably seen at least one of his videos. He was one of the first people to really succeed in making a career out of being a YouTuber, and he's inspired countless others to become content creators themselves in the process. 4.2 million subscribers might not seem like a lot by today's count, but even hitting 1 million was super impressive back in the day. But don't let the low subscriber count fool you. He has almost 1 billion views across all his videos. His channel serves as a public record for everything that he's been through over the last 15 years. It really is the good, the bad, and the real ugly in there. We've got everything from meltdowns over Mountain Dew to political commentary to a lot of open discussion about Boogie's mental health. He doesn't shy away from controversial topics. And Frank Hassell? Well, for one thing, he's not a YouTuber anymore. Sometimes there is justice in the world because YouTube deleted his whole channel for multiple violations of the terms of service. Someone might want to tell him they don't want him anymore though, because he's still there on Twitter. His name really tells you all you really need to know about the kind of content that he was putting out. He built a whole career out of targeting people online and then trolling them excessively for long periods. I know the saying goes, don't feed the trolls, but this isn't 2011 anymore. Does that not just seem really sad to you? You turned making other people feel bad and unhappy into your whole personality, and I'm not supposed to think that's the saddest thing ever? Sorry, dude. I must be missing the joke here because I just think you're kind of pathetic. You know what else is kind of sad? Changing your name from Cameron Williams to a ripoff of the Punisher. Not only is that something 14-year-olds do when they want to look cool on the internet and fail at miserably, but Frank Hassell would hate you. But I digress. That's enough about me talking about how stupid I think Frank Hassell's name is, and man, I really do. Let's move on to something else. Let's get into how Frank and Boogie are connected. Boogie is no stranger to being trolled. He's been on the internet for such a long time now that it's happened a lot over the years. And that's partly because of how easy it is to get a response out of him. He's known for reacting badly to people attacking him. You remember how as a kid your parents would always tell you to ignore it if someone was trying to pick on you, because if you did, they'd just get bored and find a new target? I don't think Boogie ever got that memo. Instead of just letting it go, he lashes out at people at stuff like this a lot. He's had quite a few public breakdowns on Twitter in the past. I mean, at least it's not Instagram? Cue Frank Hassell. He decided that Boogie was going to be his next target and was going to be the next person to get hassled. That is the cringiest thing I've ever said on this channel. I'm supposed to take this guy seriously when he sounds like a 12-year-old trying to be edgy to impress the older kids? I can't do that! But he and his followers stalked Boogie for months. The threats towards Boogie's physical and mental well-being were constant. They literally drove this man to his breaking point and thought it was funny. I don't need to explain to you how gross this is, right? You remember how I said earlier that YouTube deleted Frank's channel? That's because what he was doing to Boogie got so bad that YouTube had to intervene and shut him down. And instead of taking a long, hard look at himself and realizing that he might be part of the problem, big-brained Frank came to the conclusion that it was all Boogie's fault. Because he's actually a cartoon villain with no critical thinking skills. He's just missing the twirly mustache. But instead of, I don't know, taking the L and doing everyone a favor by disappearing to lick his wounds for a while, Frank decided that he hadn't done enough damage to Boogie. This time, though, he showed up in Boogie's hometown. He drove across 4 states just to get into Arkansas so he could start tagging Boogie in pictures on Twitter just to prove that he was in the area. Naturally, Boogie did not react well to this, and I honestly can't say I blame him. Frank had been stalking and threatening him for months at this point, and it just worn him down. Now, obviously, at this point, he should have contacted local authorities instead of trying to handle the situation himself. He shouldn't have dared Frank to show up at his house and see what happened. He shouldn't have done it because, let's be honest, it was a stupid move. There's no guarantee that Frank wouldn't have shown up at his house anyway because he'd already traveled across 4 states just to try and intimidate him. But it was still stupid on Boogie's part. But I don't know, I still can't fully blame him for it. In an interview with Keemstar, Boogie tells Frank to his face that he wanted it to stop because it was taking such a huge toll on his mental health.
I get that this is funny to you. It is not funny to me, Frank. I am mentally ill. I am out of my mind with anxiety. You know that. Okay, I've played around with you. I don't know what your obsession is with me. I don't know why you think I got your YouTube channel deleted. I don't know if it's because you're mad I got your subreddit deleted. I don't know who you are. I don't know what your problem is, but I have no problem you if you come here. Okay?
The situation certainly wasn't helped by Frank laughing in his face. This man is so unbelievably gross to me that I'm starting to run out of polite ways to complain about him. He's just disgusting. You probably know what happened next. Frank showed up at his house anyway and refused to leave until he got an answer. He started taking pictures of himself in Boogie's front yard and tagging him on Twitter. Eventually, Boogie opened the door with a firearm pointed at Frank. And when Frank still refused to leave him alone, he fired a warning shot in the air. Okay, so that's intense. Well, let's fast forward a couple of months in May of 2021. Everyone has more or less forgotten about this entire situation. There's the occasional meme about it, but it's not really a big deal anymore. The most notable thing to come out of it was Boogie's Vice interview, where he said, "I don't think I should have opened the door. I think, in retrospect, it was a mistake to open the door. You know, I certainly do not want to shoot anybody. I hate that I was put into that situation." But all of that changed on May 7th, when the when Washington County Police Department issued a warrant for Boogie's arrest on the charge of aggravated assault. Sorry to disappoint you, but there's not actually a whole lot to say about the arrest because Boogie turned himself in. A few days after the news broke, he tweeted, "I'm going to do the right thing and do it by the book. Glad to cooperate with the authorities." What we do know is that Boogie is already out on bail. He was bailed out pretty much immediately, and he's back to making content on YouTube for the time being. It's going to take a while for there to be any kind of closure on this because of how long it will take to go to trial. We're looking at summer of 2022 before we start getting any results. So make sure you subscribe to the channel because we'll definitely be covering it in a year. Anyway, here's a fun and not at all concerning fact to end this video on. Frank's response to Boogie's arrest was to start a petition calling for him to get the death penalty. I'm telling you, there's something deeply wrong with this man. And on that cheerful note, what do you guys think? Did Boogie deserve to be charged in the first place? Should Frank Hassell be the one getting locked up? What do you think will happen next? Let us know in the comments below.